Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you joining us this morning for this briefing on Connecticut paid leave. And I won't belabor it. I'm just going to introduce Andrea Barton-Reeves, who's the CEO of the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority, and she's going to give us a sort of an overview and run through some slides, and then we'll have 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so to answer some questions if you've got them. And the other thing I just was going to say is we'll have the video of this afterwards if anybody's missed it, which we can share, and we will share the PowerPoint slides with you as well. So without further ado, Andrea.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to be here this morning. As Patty mentioned, I am Andrea Barton-Reeves. I am the CEO of Connecticut's Paid Leave Authority, and I really do appreciate you taking the time this morning to join me and learn more about paid leave. So this morning I have with me my Chief of Staff, Andrea Comer, whom some of you may know, and Amber Forrest, who is the Executive Assistant of the Authority. I'm just going to jump right in and provide you with a PowerPoint presentation that gives the basics of how paid leave works, and then I'm happy to answer your questions after we are done. So just give me a moment to share my screen. If someone can tell me whether or not they can see it, that would be helpful.
You're on.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's get it going here. All right. And then I will not be able to see you, so I'll just have to connect with you afterwards. So we'll just start by walking through. All right. So just a little bit about me. I did start this role in March. So of course now is the perfect time for them to start removing leave. So I forgive the background noise. I did start in March of this year on the 2nd, after having spent about 10 years at Haar, and my last role there was being the CEO. I am active in the community. I'm from New Jersey, but I've lived in Connecticut for the last 23 years. I have a degree in English from Rutgers, and I have a law degree from New York Law School. Today we'll be going through a few things, the basics of the Paid Leave Authority, the basics of the law itself, private plans. Employers do have the option of creating their own plan in lieu of the state plan. The paid leave site, which I will go through very briefly, additional resources that we made available for employers and employees, and then we will stop with the presentation, and I'm happy to take your questions after that. So the Paid Leave Authority is designed to meet a growing need for Connecticut families to allow people to take time off to take care of themselves or their loved ones without having to worry about their lost income. So we have a two-part mission. First is to provide our workforce with ways to access paid leave benefits, and also to help employers and administrators and healthcare providers by offering them tools that will help them to navigate and administer the program. My next slide. Just giving me a hard time now. Okay, here we go. We have 5 primary responsibilities at the authority. One of them is outreach and engagement, and we've been doing quite a bit of that, mostly through webinars. We had hoped in our pre-COVID environment we would have been able to actually traverse the state, but obviously that's not possible. So we're trying to do that in the best that we can. So that's why we really appreciate your time today. We've held close to 50 webinars, and we probably have another 10 to 15 more that we've had scheduled between now and the end of the year. We are responsible for developing the policies and the procedures needed to run the program, to establish the trust fund contribution rate, which is a maximum of 0.5%, and to have a mechanism for receiving those contributions, to approve and audit any private plans that employers may choose to offer in lieu of the state plan, and to administer applications and claims for paid leave benefits. Here are some of our key dates. Our dates include having launched our website on September 4th. Registration for employers, sole proprietors, and the self-employed is actually open now, but the official date for registration is November 23rd. Some of our small employers and sole proprietors and self-employed told us that they just needed a little bit more time to think about whether or not they wanted to enroll in the program. That is true for our sole proprietors and self-employed. And some of our smaller employers said they just needed more time in general to be able to register. So we moved the registration date to November 23rd. Contributions and withholdings of those contributions begin on January 1 of 2021. and benefits availability starts on January 1 of 2022. What are some of the reasons for leave under the paid leave under the Connecticut Family and Medical Leave Law that will change in 2022? The qualifying reasons for leave are these: to create or expand your family through birth, the placement of a child with your family for adoption or through foster care, to care for your own serious health condition or that of a family member, to serve as an organ or bone marrow donor, to care for a family member who has been injured on active duty and needs physical, behavioral health, or both kinds of care, qualifying exigency leave when a family member is called to active duty overseas, and for family violence leave for up to 12 days as permitted under the state's Family Violence Leave Act. Now, who's covered under the law? Those who are covered include employers of one or more people, sole proprietors, and self-employed. Those who are sole proprietors or self-employed have the option of participating in the plan, but if they do so, they must remain in for a minimum of 3 years and give the authority 30 days notice when they plan to withdraw. Those who are not covered include employees of the state of Connecticut, with some exceptions. And that means that the managerial non-union staff of the state of Connecticut will be participating in the plan. Those that are in unionized environments have the option of voting to participate in the plan. Municipalities and local or regional boards of education are also exempt, but they too, if they have covered employees, meaning unionized environments that vote to participate in the plan, then they may do so once that vote has been taken. What's important to know here is that with respect to municipalities and local or regional boards of education, if those unionized or if those organized labor employees choose to participate in the plan and vote to do so, then the entire workforce then participates in the plan, whether they are in the union or not. The exception to this is for non-public elementary or secondary schools. So even in a unionized or non-unionized environment, those that work for that particular type of employer are exempt from the program. Here's a comparison of the current family medical leave law versus the law that will come into effect in 2022. Right now, our current law applies to employers with 75 employees or more. That employee had to have worked with an employer for 12 months and have had to have worked at least 1,000 hours for the 12 months preceding their request for leave. Job protection was available after 12 months, and they could receive 16 weeks of leave. It should actually be in a 24-month period. And the employer could compel the employee to use all of their accrued time for their paid time off that was attributable to family and medical leave. In 2022, this law will change considerably. It will then apply to all employers with one or more employees. And paid leave will be available if the person has earned at least $2,325 in the highest earning quarter of the last 4 of the 5 quarters in which they've worked for a Connecticut employer. And they can do that by having worked for one or more employers. Rather than having an hours worked requirement or a length of time that's 12 months or more, an employee has to be currently employed and working in Connecticut, or they had to have been employed and working in Connecticut for the last 12 weeks immediately preceding their leave request. And job protection will be available after 3 months as opposed to 12. The amount of leave will be 12 weeks in a 12-month period rather than 16 weeks in a 24-month period, with an additional 2 weeks of leave available for incapacitation during pregnancy. And while now under the current law, an employer can compel an employee to use all of their accrued time for their paid time off, the employer can still compel the employee to use their accrued time. But under the new law in 2022, they have to allow an employee to keep up to 2 weeks of their accrued leave. They cannot compel them to use the entire leave for their paid time. There's some important things that we tell employers that they need to know: that their employee will apply for leave as they do every other leave that they have now. They will also determine whether or not they qualify and if they can use any of their accrued time to cover that leave. As I mentioned earlier, employers must allow employees to keep up to 2 weeks of their accrued time. They can tell the employee that if they don't have enough accrued time to cover all of their weeks of leave, that they may apply to the paid leave authority for benefits. And if they are eligible to receive benefits, they may do so, but they may not have job protected leave because they may not have worked for the employer for 3 months. And in those instances, the employee and the employer have to come to some kind of agreement that they will have a job when they return. One of the other questions that we receive quite often is whether or not employers have to change any of their benefits policies because of paid leave, and the answer is no. And with the exception of allowing employees to keep that 2 weeks of leave, employers can still offer short-term, long-term disability, their current health care, or any other benefits that they currently offer. As I mentioned, the employers actually may choose, or the employer may require the employee to use accrued paid leave time for part of the 12 to 14-week leave. For those employers that have spouses that work for the same employer, under the federal law, which has not changed, and we don't anticipate a change in the federal law, those spouses are required to share their leave to bond with a newborn or to care for either of their parents with a serious health condition. Under the current state law, those same reasons for sharing leave are true. But under the law as it will change in 2022, spouses are no longer required to share their 12-week paid leave entitlement for any reason. As I mentioned earlier, employers that may choose not to participate in the public plan may offer a private plan option, and the statute allows for this option. That may be done under a number of circumstances that I've outlined here. The first is that the plan has to offer same or better benefits as the public plan, and it can't cost the employees more than the 0.5% it would cost them to participate in the public plan. The employer has to demonstrate the ability to administer the claims and benefits, and the statute requires that the employer hold a vote of the majority of eligible employees who work in Connecticut to see whether they would prefer to participate in a public plan or the private plan. And in the end, the Paid Leave Authority must approve that private plan. Finally, there is a website that we launched on September 4th of 2020. It is ctpaidleave.org. And I'm going to give you a brief demonstration of that. You can find a number of resources on this site. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So I can just go into that very briefly for you. Let's see if it will let me in there. Okay. Go back to the right. So on the home page, you will see the businesses can now register. There is a call out for sole proprietors or self-employed. The site was developed by interviewing sole proprietors, self-employed, large employers, small employers, and employees in the state so we can understand what it is that they wanted to see on the site and what information they wanted available to them. So there are specific calls for employees, employers, third-party administrators, and healthcare providers. There's an entire section of frequently asked questions, news and updates, an opportunity to join our mailing list, and an opportunity to submit specific questions. I don't mean to make you dizzy, but I'm going to go back up here for a moment. We just added this feature, which is called Events, where you can join the mailing list, and you can also let us know, see if it will load for us today. It doesn't look like it wants to. Let's see, give it a moment. There we go. Events calendar, which outlines all of the other webinars that we will be offering from now through the end of the month. So that's available here as well. Go back to the home page. And we'll go right to employers. For employers, there's a specific site that also offers information. It's the video that's available for employers, information about eligibility, a timeline with the key dates that's available here, the role of the employer. But what I'd like to point out to you is that there is a plethora of resources that are available here, including a very comprehensive employer toolkit. You can see it's 24 pages long, and it summarizes everything that an employer would probably need to know about paid leave. Okay, just go down here. There's a table of contents, what it is, what the life events are. So all of these are available in one place for employers. Let me also then very quickly go to the employee section. Okay, so for employees, there's also information that's available here. There's a video guide for employees as well. The entire site is now available in English and Spanish with other languages to be added. There's a timeline for employees that's available here as well. A brief explanation of benefits, the calculation as to how much benefits will be when they're finally available, what the qualifying circumstances are for leave, what their role is as an employee with respect to payroll deductions and a contribution to the trust. And finally, here, there is a contributions estimator. One of the most frequently asked questions we get is how much will come out of my paycheck so that I will contribute to the trust. So if, for example, you make $250 a week and you want to know what your estimated contribution will be from your paycheck, it's $1.25 per week. The ways in which employees can prepare is to download a fact sheet, which is available here, that can be printed, that outlines everything that I just discussed, who can participate, when, who's excluded, what the qualifying events are, what the calculations are, what the benefits are, wage replacement conditions, and at the bottom, an opportunity to contact us. I will stop sharing now. And thank you for your time and entertain any questions you might have. I frozen?
Sure, I have a question. Is the authority going to be tracking how employers react to this? And what I'm talking about is during the debate, there was a fear expressed that some private employers would cut back on benefits that are now offered. You made clear they don't have to do that, but will there be any attempt to track what they in fact do?
We don't have an intent to track what employers are doing with respect to the benefits that they offer their employees. If an employer is offering a private plan, for example, we will ask them about benefits coordination because we'll need to know that. We'll also need to know that when we offer benefits as well, because that's part of the approval process when an employer applies for a private plan. I'm sure we'll hear anecdotally from employees if plans change because of paid leave. And in those instances, we would want to have a discussion with the employers about what part of administering the plan is compelling them to make changes. What we're hearing mostly from employers right now is they want to make sure that there's benefits coordination with their short and long-term disability plans and what employees may receive in paid leave benefits from the Paid Leave Authority. That's the first concern. The second concern is the expansive definition of family, which we understand, because family not only includes the traditional definitions of family, but also those that may have a familial relationship by affinity. So the person that you grew up with or who lived across the street who's like a grandmother to you. The question we get is, how will you prove that? How will you know? So we're actually borrowing guidance from other states that also have a pretty expansive definition of family. That definition is now posted in the Connecticut Law Journal for public comment, and we are getting quite a bit of public comment. So we will then be able to also work with the Department of Labor so that we can give employers more guidance as to how to actually suss that out so that you don't have someone who's taking a lot of leave for people who they don't necessarily have that type of relationship with. So I can't say, Mark, that we've heard that employers are thinking about making wholesale changes to their benefits packages. They're really most concerned about those two things. That's what we've been hearing.
Is that definition also going to be put on your website?
It will. Once we've received public comment, that comment period closes actually Friday. And then we will take into consideration all of the comment and then put the definition up on the website. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Andrea, it's Christine Stuart.
Hi, morning, Christine.
Good morning. So do we know how many employers plan to offer a private plan to their employees and won't be participating in this, or are the majority going to participate?
I don't know either of those right now. So registration has just started. Our statistics as of today is Tuesday. So over the weekend, I did get a report that said at the time we probably had about only 9 or 10 employers that had indicated to us that they intend to offer a private plan, but it's very early in the registration process. We do have close to, I think as of yesterday, we had 11 insurance companies that had expressed an interest in offering a private plan and participating in the market. There's a lot of interest in the private insurer community. And it's a little early for us to know how many employers will actually want to offer a private plan. But we're encouraging employers to offer something. If you want to offer the private plan, that's fine. If you want to go into the public plan, that's great. We just want to make sure that everyone has access to the benefit.
And have you heard anything, more from people about the difficulty? I know, obviously if you're making $250 a week, you're only getting $1.25 taken out for this. But the difficulty of the average person to just have a little bit more taken out of that paycheck.
Yes, I am, and I think all of us at the authority are extraordinarily sensitive to that. And so I want to start out by saying that there was never a thought that when the law was passed or the program was implemented that we would be in the midst of a pandemic. But I will say two things. That first, legislatively, our deadlines have been established, so we're doing our best to try to meet those as they've been currently established. But more important than that, we get so many requests for benefits, and people are so anxious to have this program start, and we probably get 3 times as many questions about when can I actually get access to benefits than we do concerns about contributing to the fund, and I don't know if there's really any particularly ideal time to contribute because money is tight for many people across our state for a variety of reasons. And I think COVID has brought into sharp relief the economic fragility of many of the people who live in our state, and we know that. But the other thing that it's brought to the fore is the enormous need for a safety net. And one of the ways that we can do that is to continue to keep the program on track so that come 2022, people will be able to get access to the to the paid leave benefits that they really need. We hear it all the time, that people desperately need this leave. So it's one of the reasons that we continue to pursue the law as it's currently written, and because we want to make sure those benefits are available when people are expecting them.
You said there's a definition in the Connecticut Law Journal. Are you going to provide that to us today?
Oh, we can make that available to you. So it is posted on the Connecticut Law Journal site, but there's an entire glossary of terms for all of the terms that are in the statute that's actually in the Connecticut Law Journal, but we can get that to you. That's not a problem.
And what is the rate of contribution going to be? It's up to 0.5%.
Right.
Is that the plan to start out at that maximum?
Yes, that is the plan, to start out at the maximum.
Hi, Andrea. This is John Craven with News 12. I wanted to ask you. Morning. I just wanted to clarify something real quick. I know you went over this in the presentation,
Sure.
but so let's say I need to take off a week to take care of my mother. You're saying that if I have a week of vacation left with my employer, I have to exhaust vacation time first, but they have to leave me with 2 weeks remaining, correct?
Right. So in your case, in the scenario that you presented, if you only had a week of vacation to cover it, your employer could not compel you to use that week because you're entitled to keep up to 2 of those
Right.
weeks.
Okay. But if if I had 3 weeks, then the first week would go out of my vacation time.
That's right. So employers have the option of allowing employees to make that choice, or they can mandate that they use it. I can tell you that most of the employers that we've spoken to, very anecdotally, their current policy is to have their employees exhaust whatever accrued paid time they have when they use family and medical leave. So it wouldn't compel them to change that, but they now couldn't force people to exhaust it.
Great, gotcha. And just one more question.
Sure.
And I apologize if you guys already went over this. I had to step
Please
away for a
don't.
second.
No, it's fine.
I mean, you've heard from small businesses especially that are worried that people are going to abuse the system, that they're going to be very liberal with the amount of time they take off. What would you say to those businesses, or what have you said to them?
Yeah, so I completely understand that. I would say to them that I understand that, It's very new, especially for small businesses, because the law, as I pointed out in the presentation, previously applied to employers that had 75 people or more. Now it'll apply to employers that have one person or more. And I would say that the degree of scrutiny that you apply to requests for paid leave is really up to you as an employer. But you should also know that it's an entitlement. So if the person comes to you with appropriate documentation from a healthcare provider, you do have to provide that. But then as an employer, you do have the ability to ask for more information from your employee if you have concerns that they are not taking the leave for the reasons that they stated. So as an employer, you can ask for a second opinion. You can ask for a recertification of the medical time that they've asked for. You can ask for, and once we get the definition of family aligned, you can ask for more information about the family member. There are different things that you can do. You're not just stuck with taking the medical certification saying, okay, I just have to take the person's word for it that they're taking leave for this particular purpose. You do have other options that you can exercise, and there is a webinar that we'll be offering if you go onto the site about the legal implications of administering family and medical leave that can help small employers answer some of those questions, because it's very new for them, and we get that. Dan, you look like you wanted to ask a question. No? Okay.
So Andrea, if you're an employer and you disagree with your employee, what's the appeals process, or how does that work if you just feel like it's not legitimate?
Yeah, so the appeals process is through the Department of Labor. So if your employee files for leave and you deny it, that employee can then go to the Department of Labor and file their grievance there. We don't statutorily have a role in administering those grievances at all. If you're an employer and you disagree, you also have the option of speaking to the Department of Labor about that. And which we spoke to the Department of Labor yesterday about how they will take complaints from employers and concerns that they have. So they're still working on that, but I think they'll have an answer fairly soon.
But ultimately, it's up to the employer to either accept or deny the claim?
Yes, it is. It is. So if the employer, and especially for small employers, this is going to be very new territory for them. It really is. But we will be available to help with those types of determinations because we know that it's new, but it is up to the employer.
I had a question. Steve Singer at the Hartford Courant.
Morning, Steve.
Hi, I'm sorry if I came late, but
No problem.
I noticed on CBIA's website that your organization and they were doing program jointly to answer questions, I think, from
Yes.
businesses. Did they reach out to you or did you reach out to them? Because they were obviously not supportive of the legislation,
Yeah.
but now that the program's in place,
Mm-hmm.
deal with it, I guess. But I'm wondering how that's been going, and that's an ongoing thing.
Yeah, they actually, it was a little bit of both, so I reached out to CBIA because I actually knew that they were in the midst of a leadership change, and I just wanted to ask a little bit about that. And they were very kind to return my call. And so we have been working together. I would say that we respect each other's positions with respect to the statute. And I think we've come to an understanding that it's here, and that I and my team and I will do our best to administer it the best way that we can. And that, from my perspective, also includes being very transparent and helping employers to answer as many questions as we can answer about how the program will work. So I'm actually very grateful to CBIA for being as open and receptive to having those dialogues with us, and I really do hope that it continues.
What kind of questions have you been fielding from them? And is this an ongoing thing, or is it just a couple of sessions now and then?
I think it's a little bit of both. So we've, employers wanted to know about the registration process, about private plans, some of the questions that John posed, which is, I'm not even sure how to make determinations. Someone comes to me and applies for leave. How much will people get in benefits? How much will they have to contribute? So many of those questions, are answered on the website. I will also credit CBIA with saying to us, it would be helpful. The website's great, but it'd be helpful if we had something we could hand to employers So it was with their cooperation that we were able to put together that employer toolkit, and we're really grateful to them for that suggestion. It was something we were working on, but they were really helpful in helping us to figure out what the content of that should be that would be helpful to them. So sometimes I just answer, a question or two that someone from CBA may post to me by email. And if they ask me to participate in a program, we're happy to do that as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I
Do
see
you
on
have,
the, I see on the finance committee agenda, there was an update on the employee collection system. So you can tell us where is that standing now?
Yeah, so that I describe that really as the build, the entire IT system. So it comprises of three parts, one of which is building the website, which is built. The second is the registration, and the third is the employee contribution collection process. So we're in phase 2 of 3. The third one will be the employee contribution collection system. That is due to go live mid-December, so that we can continue so that we will be able to take contributions. We're hoping as early as February. So employers are required to withhold the pay starting in January. But what we heard very clearly from employers is we need to remit to you on the same cadence that we remit to the Department of Revenue Services and to the Department of Labor. So please do not create a different schedule for us. So our remittance schedule matches the other remittance schedules of the other agencies. So everything, all the money essentially is due to us at the last day of the month following the end of the quarter. But some small employers have said, I don't really want to hold on to money that long. That's not comfortable for me. I don't really have a place to put it. I'm not interested in doing that. So in having heard that, we're now working on modifying the IT build so that employers who want to can submit their money as early as February rather than waiting until April. And so we're in the midst of building and testing that now.
I think we had a question from Dan Haar.
Yeah, it looks like he was trying to come off mute, and I'm like, yeah. Dan, did you have a question?
yeah, are these contributions pre-tax or after-tax?
They are FICA based. So that, because the definition of wages is, we're basically using the Department of Labor definition of wages. So employers will be withholding the 0.5% on the number they use to calculate FICA.
Right, but are they, and then, so is that treated as a FICA payment? It's pre-tax, right?
That's right.
So if a person makes $80,000 a year, pays $400 for this, that $400 will essentially function as a deduction.
That's correct.
And will that fall under the cap of the SALT deduction cap?
So are you talking about the Social Security cap?
No. Well, I'll ask about that too. But
Okay.
but I was referring to the Federal Tax Reform Act of 2017 state and local tax cap of $10,000.
Okay.
That's the deduction.
All right. So I will confess that I'm not as familiar with that as you are, so I can look into that. But I can find that out for you. Well, I am much more familiar with the cap of the Social Security, the wage cap for Social Security, which is the cap for contribution. So even if you're making, above that, your contributions are capped at that level. But I can find out the other answer for you. Dan, if I could ask you to drop that question in the chat so I can bring it back and get an answer for you, that would be helpful.
Okay. And then, but regardless, it's well, I guess it does matter that it's whether it's under that SALT deduction. And so do you consider this to be a tax?
I don't describe it as a tax. I mean, I think practically I've heard people refer to it that way. We really think about it as a contribution to the trust fund that will eventually people will be able to get access to be able to get paid benefits. Some taxes don't usually work that way. It's not like you can pay into it and then, it may show up in roads or schools or, other kinds of ways that aren't necessarily direct benefit to you. So I don't tend to think of it that way. I know that people do, and I understand and appreciate that.
Uh-huh. And do you have a lot of people think that there are going to be many more legitimate requests for leaves than the trust fund can handle. What,
Mm,
now considering that the statute does not allow you to increase it above 0.5%, I have two questions. One is,
mhm.
what is the mechanism? Is it strictly statutory to raise the contribution level in future years to above 0.5% of wages? And
Mhm.
secondly, what's the mechanism for managing that, should it become a sort of an ordinary norm that that people have more requests that are legitimate that
Mm,
handle?
okay. So the way that the statute is currently drafted, the contribution rate can't go above 0.5%. So the way that solvency is managed from that perspective is the statute does allow us to lower the rate of benefits that are paid so that the fund can remain solvent and folks can actually get access to it. And if you look in the chat, Andrea Comer, who's our chief of staff, has actually dropped a link to the actuarial analysis, because that's the next place that I'm going. So we did have an updated, I should say, actuarial analysis completed, because I wanted to know the last one, and basically the only one, was done in 2015 before the law was passed, and where a model of standing up this authority was nested under the Department of Labor and looked very different than it does right now. So, I thought the responsible thing to do was to say, wait a minute, I need some updated numbers. I really need to see what this is going to look like, not even anticipating COVID. And so we asked the firm that initiated the study, who conducted the first study, to update it and to let us know what those numbers would look like in the worst case scenario of our current environment and in the best case scenario. So even in the worst case scenario, the fund is not insolvent. It doesn't. It has lower reserves, but it isn't insolvent. So that's a public document. We've had other press ask us for that, and we can release it. And we've just put the link in the chat. So if you want that, that's available to you. And that's just you don't have to file a FOIA for that. Just let us know you want it, and we'll and the email address we can send it to, and we'll just send it to you.
And Andrea, to follow up on Dan's question, and I know you guys just sent out this actuarial. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but
It's okay.
how much do you guys anticipate getting into the fund by the end of next year? And
Yeah.
and do you guys have an estimate of how many claims you might have to pay out the first year?
Yeah, so I'm just going to do this off the top of my head. I do have the report, so I'm actually going to refer all of you to it. But generally, we're looking at about 485 million in collections, about 325 million in claims across all categories. So that's sole proprietor, self-employed, pregnancy leaves, your own serious health condition of a family, and pregnancy. So it's throughout all of the categories. And the number of claims, I want to grab that because I don't have that right off the top of my head, but it's around the 50,000 mark, probably a little bit higher than that. But I really would commend you to read the report so that you can have the specific numbers, but that's generally where we are.
And that's for year one, right?
Yeah, that's for year one. But the report goes out 5 years, so you'll be able to see those numbers too. And I really don't have those off the top of my head. So I am going to show you to read the report for those. I'm really just recalling the year one numbers generally.
I had a kind of I guess, a mechanical question here. You talked about determinations that the Department of Labor has to make. So I'm assuming they have to draft regulations, which would then have to go through the Regulation Review Committee. Obviously, the program doesn't start till 2022. So can you sort of walk us through that? I mean, if the Department of Labor is going to make determinations on whether or not somebody's denial was justified or not, they're going to need some sort of guidelines.
Yeah, they are. So, I think we all know, understand, and appreciate the position that the Department of Labor is in right now because of our current economic environment. So what we've done is we've worked with them in two ways. One of which is that we've put together that glossary, which said, and we will share that with you, that helps to define all of the terms. So that's the first place to start, because although as a quasi-governmental agency, we cannot promulgate regulations, we can provide guidelines and definitions. We're hoping to offer that as a first place to start, to give some guidance to the public and to help the Department of Labor kind of get those regulations off the ground. The second is that we're continuing to work with them to basically adopt, to the extent that we can, the current federal regulations for family and medical leave, and use those as a basis for determining how we can adapt them to our new state law that will come into effect in 2022, so that we can help DOL accelerate that process, because you're right, it does take some time. But we're just trying to be good partners, because we recognize that their focus is on making sure that people get their benefits. So we're working with them to help them write those, and then give them to them and say, does this work for you? Is this what you would do? This is how you would use them, and then let them walk through the regulatory process.
So I think we have time for, say, one more or two more quick ones.
Okay,
Folks
sure.
have any questions? Nobody's got anything?
No.
All right, well, if everybody's good, we can share we'll share the PowerPoint if folks want it, and whatever these other documents are. If you've got any other questions, you guys know how to reach us. And I think we're good.
Yes, I think we owe you the PowerPoint, the actuarial analysis, and the glossary. So if we have your email addresses, which I think we have a way of reaching you, we'll make sure that you get all three of those things. If I've missed a document or something that I owe you, just let me know now and I'll add it to my list. But we'll make sure you get those. Okay. Well, thank you. I really do appreciate you taking the time to be here today. And if you have any other questions or concerns, just let us know.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.